Welcome to the Cruising is Life podcast. Whether you're a seasoned cruiser or just starting out, we have something for everyone. So sit back, relax, and get ready to set sail with us on the Cruising is Life podcast.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Cruising is Life podcast. Justin couldn't make it today. He got stuck at work, but we are joined by Tyler. What's going on, buddy?
What's going on, everyone? How's it going? Good to be here with my friend Brandon here as we talk Costa by Carnival. It's going to be what a episode here. A lot going on, of course, in the industry, especially with Costa with Carnival next year. They have a brand new ship debuting coming up here in the next few months. So, Brandon, I'm excited to talk with you about this.
Yeah, for sure. And it's still kind of like in its early phases, I feel like. So, because I surveyed a little bit with my community tab on YouTube and then on Instagram as well. And of course, just being one ship and one, particular home port, it's just the Venezia that's sailing right now. So, there's not a whole lot of people that have been on the Venezia just yet or even tried Costa by Carnival, but, it's still something that's, again, like you said, they're adding a ship next year over on the West Coast, which I feel like is kind of one of those markets that are going to end up being just like New York, where it's not a whole lot of people are going to be trying it because it's over on the West Coast, but still, they are expanding. They're adding more ships, so it's be cool.
I find it interesting, the West Coast. Okay, when I was here in Costa by Carnival, I was not expecting the West Coast to be an option. And the reason I thought so is they have the Panorama already. And if you're not familiar with folks watching the podcast here, the Panorama is not exactly Carnival's biggest selling ship. In terms, they're not sailing most sailings 100%. So I find it odd that they're putting two Vista-class ships doing pretty much the same exact runs here. I mean, there's little variations, of course, but they're more or less the pretty much same runs in terms of the Mexican Riviera over there. So I find it very interesting there that they're putting, of course, the second one all the way over there in the West Coast, which, again, I don't know about you, Brandon, but when I heard that, I was a little like, interesting.
Yeah, I was surprised that they even put the Panorama there in the first place, and like you said, it's not really a ship that sells out every single week. The Panorama is a great ship. I will keep vouching for them to bring her over to the East Coast here to Florida. I'd like to see her replace Vista over here in Carnival, but that's just me. Or even just Horizon over in Miami or something. But, and with the recent struggles of the Panorama going into dry dock, I mean, it just further proves that they just really need to put those ships over here. But yeah, I was pretty surprising. I was pretty surprised that they decided to put the Firenze over there. So I guess we'll see how it goes because they're only doing 4 and 5 night cruises over there.
Yeah, exactly here. And then they have also the Carnival Radiance over there in the same family doing the 3 and 4 night cruises. So again, I find it very interesting here with what Carnival is doing with their deployments with these two ships here. Mm-hmm. I am glad they're moving the first one of the Costa by Carnival ships down to Canaveral. She'll be here this winter. No, not this winter, but next winter.
I'll be on her.
2024. And yes, Brandon will be on her. I'm trying to go ahead and see if I can make it on, I believe, the 4 night cruise. I don't know if that's still sold out yet or whatever, but I am keeping an eye out on that one. And hopefully we'll be able to get on her. Check her out. She's a really beautiful ship. And we'll get to talk about it a little bit later here. But these ships are some of the most beautiful ships in Carnival's fleet. And
they really
are. Nothing like Carnival has ever done with the Carnival fleet. So it's very interesting here. And that's the thing here. Like, as we said with the title in the thumbnail of this video, should Carnival expand these ships or should they switch to another class with the Costa fleet? Or should they get rid of them? Again, it's a heated discussion, as Brandon said, with the survey we conducted in our communities of the Cruising is Life. It's people are split some ways or the other.
Yeah, it's funny because when I surveyed here on YouTube in my community tab, there was, I think, 60 plus votes, which was great. I loved all the feedback. About over 50% had not been on it, and another 30% had no intentions on trying it. But then there was the 14% that have. 8% really liked it, and the 6 said they didn't. So it's an even split almost. And then when I surveyed on Instagram, it was about, I think I had 3 or 4 that said they had been, and 3 or 4 that said they didn't like it. So it's down the middle almost as far as what the surveys that I conducted for this podcast in particular.
Absolutely. It's a very split again because this is something Carnival has never done before in
Hmm.
terms of bringing these ships in. It's a very new concept for Carnival cruisers here and actually hasn't been out that long, truth be told. Again,
Hmm.
the Carnival of Venezia has been sailing for some time, but again, she's not a big ship, right? She's not like no Oasis class ship, so she is one of Carnival's biggest ships, of course, besides the XL class. She's part of the Vista class, which is
Right.
one of their larger classes of ships, but again, she's sailing out of New York, which is again same with LA. It's not a very popular destination. There's still a lot of people who go on them, but
Hmm.
it's not as popular as say your Florida ports, right?
Yeah.
So it is very, very interesting here to see like the people's feedbacks here because New York cruisers also are a different market than what you normally would get out of Florida or
Right.
Galveston, right? So it's different clientele. Than what you would see out of Florida ports. So it's always interesting to see what people think, right? Because the ship perception may change once she comes to Florida.
Right.
And same thing with the West Coast. Once that ship arrives to the West Coast, people's perception on that ship could change. Again, with those different factors here. But I have heard good things from that ship. First, a very
Hmm.
unique experience, but I've also heard bad things from that ship. So again, it's a
Yeah.
mixed can of worms to put the least.
Yeah, and I think it depends on the type of cruiser, and I think like you mentioned the market. Different markets have different types of cruisers. There's
Yep.
people that sail over in Europe are completely looking for completely different things than people that sail over here. Out of Florida, out of the U.S. And, New York's a different market. That's a different group of people than you would get down here in Florida. It's different than what you would get over in Los Angeles too.
Absolutely here. That's the best way to put it here. There is a lot of differences between the markets. And again, I'm looking forward to seeing when the ship comes to Canaveral, right?
Hmm.
Because it's going to really put it into that normal market that most cruise ships operate, which is the
Right.
Florida itineraries, right? Because she does do a mixture of Caribbean itineraries
Right.
from, New York City, but they're the longer ones, right? So
Right.
I will be very interested to see how it plays out once there's again a different shift in the markets, right? Because
Hmm.
she'll be doing also, I believe she's in the winter, if I'm not correct,
Yeah.
Brandon, which is prime cruise season too, right?
Yes,
So
indeed.
I will be very interested to see how it plays out here. Of course, the other one I believe is starting up sometime earlier this year, in next year, I should say, in Los Angeles out of
Right.
Long Beach. So I'm excited to see that one too, because that's going to be a whole different doing the 4 and 5 night cruises on that size of ship, which is I think one of the first for Carnival here, because the Vista, the Panorama, and the Horizon, they both do a little 6 and 8 nights, so a little longer
Hmm.
itineraries here. So very interested to see, Brandon.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel like once the ship gets down here to Canaveral, I think Carnival's biggest market is down here in Florida. Of course, they have their Galveston ships, things like that, but I feel like their biggest market is here in Florida. So I feel like for the group of people that say they have not been on the Venezia yet and want to try it, I feel like it is because the ship has only been out for a few months. So you really can't get a true judge of a ship until it's been, a year, maybe 2 years. And of course, you've got to have it in different markets too. You got to have it different places, to let different crowds get on it. But overall, I mean, I would say a lot of the complaints or a lot of the things that I think people have found negative about it are because it's a Costa ship.
Yep.
And I think,
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
very heavy on the Italian, factor. And obviously that's why they go fun Italian style. It's Costa by Carnival. This isn't your just everyday run of the mill Carnival ship.
Yep.
This is this is just not your everyday Carnival ship that you're getting on here when you look into that.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things I find interesting here, right? Is when this was announced, they didn't really give much details. Of course, once they got closer to sailing, they finally
Hmm.
released what they added. Originally, they were saying we're not going to change the ship whatsoever.
Hmm.
Their tone kind of changed once they got a little closer. They added a guy's burger joint, which
Hmm.
kind of was a needed, right? That's one of the things I
Right.
want to touch on here with the Carnival Luminosa here. This was kind of
Yeah.
their first before Costa by Carnival, the official thing was it, because they transferred this ship from Costa here to the Carnival fleet and they did nothing to it. So this was kind of like
Right.
what Costa by Carnival is, right? They slapped the new paint on with the whale tail. Well, they didn't add the whale tail; they just slapped the whale tail colors to the
Hmm.
funnel of the Carnival Luminosa. But they didn't change anything. They didn't change any of the restaurants on board. They have like a burger joint. It isn't Guy's Burger.
Yeah.
It's not serving the same quality of food,
Yeah.
right? So that's just one example here. But besides that, again, not many tweaks and changes made with the Carnival Luminosa. However, with those other ships, the Venezia and the Firenze here, those ships, they are, of course, at modifying it a little bit, adding those guys burgers as well as some other Carnival Cruise favorites, but they're twisting it, right? They're putting
Right.
a Costa by Carnival twist on it, which is
Right.
super neat to see. And again, they did a good job with that. I have to admit, that was one of the things I was very skeptical at when they were originally announced all this. I was like, this seems more or less like they were just going to take some ships from another cruise line and throw it in their service, call it by Carnival just to make some extra money, which and it was kind of my big fear. But now I see it playing out. I see it's a lot more than what my fear didn't really come true with what I was expecting it to
Right.
be. And I'm kind of glad it did because I'm actually kind of impressed of how well these ships have done and just how great of a design change they've done, especially with Guy's Burger as well as some other spots which they carnivalized it. But they didn't do it too much, right? They didn't change it 100%.
Right, exactly. Like the Havana area is still the original area that it was on the Costa Venezia, which is the Teresa areas, and I think that's still the exclusive area, just like the Havana area is. And of course, switching over to like restaurants, like you mentioned, they do have Guy's Burger Joint on the Venezia, which is great. I don't know why they didn't do that on the Luminosa, but that's kind of a story for a different day. That's kind of what I was worried about originally. Whenever they brought the Luminosa over, all they did was paint the Luminosa. They did a full transfer on that. The Luminosa is not Costa by Carnival. That is a full on quote unquote Carnival ship now. But they painted the funnel. The Costa by Carnival ships, if anybody has noticed, with the blue paint jobs, they all have the red stripes. But with the Costa Carnival ships, they have that yellow stripe to show that they're Costa by Carnival as well. But the Luminosa has the red stripe still. So they really are treating that like a true Carnival ship over on the Luminosa, but it's not. It just wasn't done quite right, and I think they did a better job. I feel like the Luminosa is more of a Costa ship than the Venezia is, just because of they did make a couple good changes that they needed to make it feel more like Carnival.
Absolutely. Here again, as you mentioned, that's a discussion for another day here, but it does tie in really well with like this whole episode, right? Like Costa by Carnival, right? Again, that was what I was expecting, especially when that came out kind of before this whole thing was really launched. So that was kind of what I was expecting it to be, right? And again, is they're just going to slap a Carnival name to it,
right?
Call it a Carnival ship, even though it's not really whatsoever one. I mean, of course, it's like that's one of the big things when it first came out too, is that's what their whole thing is going to be, basically the Costa experience, more or less, with Carnival staff. So you're going to have your favorite Carnival, staff, whether your bartenders, your cruise directors, and your captains, they're all going to be Carnival staff. So you get that Carnival level of service here, but it's on a Costa ship. So that was kind of a little bit worried about when I first heard about it, right? Was, oh man, they're just going to simply, send these ships to North America, slap some crew on, put a new name up, and it's still the same Costa, not experience, but the same Costa vibe and everything. But I'm glad, as you mentioned, they changed it up with Guy's Burger and things like that. Again, really well done job by Carnival, because these ships, if you haven't seen the inside, folks, these ships
it's beautiful.
inside are beautiful. Especially at the atrium area, where like they usually have I believe the font. What's what they call us? I'm
the
not
Dreamscape.
Carnival. What? Dreamscape. That's it.
That big LED column that's on the Vista class. Yeah.
There's not that on the Venezia. Instead, it's like a statue centerpiece here. Very Italian themed, of course, of Italy. Beautiful. Absolutely stunning. I mean, photos don't do it justice. It's hard to explain. It is stunning.
Right. And they even have in one of the there's two main dining rooms on that class of ship. And one of them has, it's not actually water. They did a really cool LED effect with it to make it look like water. But they have, just like a block in the middle of it, sectioned off with like a little bridge over it. And they have a gondola sitting in there. So it really feels like you're sitting, in Venice, Italy, which is really cool. Like that's not something you see on the Celebration. That's not something that's on the Panorama or the Conquest. Like, these ships, yes, they now have Carnival names to them, but they really aren't your true Carnival ship. And it's such a weird mix too, because you're mixing this very beautiful and high, like not luxurious Italian line, but you get these heavy Italian vibes and just designs on a cruise ship, but then you're mixing it with Carnival, which hopefully I don't make this sound bad, like towards Carnival. It's more of just like, the Italian vibes and then just like the American market, just completely different. And then, of course, Carnival is known for, the fun ships. They always got the really big parties, things like that. So you get a crowd that loves to party usually on a Carnival ship. So it's very strange that you're putting that party crowd that you would typically would assume or kind of associate with Carnival. You're putting that certain demographic and crowd on this really nice Italian ship too.
Yeah, that was one of the biggest things that they were worried about when it was first coming out. It was like, how is the crowd going to react to this elegance of a ship, right? The ship is stunning, and in more ways than one. Look at the Lido deck. The Lido deck is not your typical
it's beautiful
Lido deck.
though.
It looks like a city.
It does,
So
actually.
absolutely amazing. So that was one of Carnival's I was hearing from people on board, some buddies who were sailing on these cruises, was that was when they were talking to the Carnival executives on board. That was their big thing. They were a little worried. Again, as you mentioned, not to say anything bad about Carnival, but they were a little reaction about, is the ship going to be trashed? Of course, the stories floating around the news here of artwork being stolen. They were a little worried about that.
Ah, that was on the legend. That doesn't matter.
We
we don't talk about what happens in the legend.
That's right. So that was what the fear though was, right, Brandon?
Yeah.
So I'm kind of glad to see though that the Carnival crowd has respected these ships with what the elegance that they deserve, right? So
Yeah.
absolutely beautiful nonetheless here with these ships, and I'm so glad Carnival has been able to have these ships in their fleet. Hope they're working out well for them.
Yeah.
Because we're going to get to this a little later in the podcast here, but maybe down the road we can see some XL class ships maybe join the fleet.
Right, for sure. And yeah, it seems to be going fairly well for them. I have a friend, some of you may know him, Robbie, that cruises NCL more than a lot, but he actually just booked his second cruise on the Venezia. He's doing a 10-day on it now. And so, I mean, is somebody that's very heavy on Norwegian cruising, but coming back for a second round on the Venezia. And from what I heard from him was, everything kind of felt like a Carnival ship. It was just kind of that little, Italian sprinkle and vibes to it all too. But overall, It feels like a Carnival ship from what at least I heard from him. And, yeah, maybe we're not the best people to speak about it because we haven't tried it just yet. I am booked on the Venezia. I just not sailing on her for quite a while, but so it is something that not either of us have experienced firsthand, but it is something that kind of just going off the crowd's reaction to this point.
Exactly. Me and Brandon may have not sailed it, but we've seen many YouTube videos. We've seen many things on the internet, so we get a good grasp of what's happening here. So again, yeah, these ships are very, very beautiful here. Again, I am very interested to see the future of these ships, right? Again, how long are these going to stay in the fleet? I know they're hopefully stay many years, right?
Right.
But again, what if Costa rebounds? That's a question I want to throw out here. What if Costa rebounds? Well, they're needing this capacity. Do you see ever these getting transferred back, or is this what are we seeing here? Let's just say hypothetically, Costa went back from Costa's not doing so well right now for the folks who aren't familiar, but let's say hypothetically, right? Costa goes back to doing just as good as Carnival.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I feel like at that point they're going to need the capacity. So it depends on how much they need the capacity for. I feel like, honestly, I wouldn't be surprised at some point if, the next major dry dock for both of these ships, we see maybe not Skyride itself added to it, but, we might get, maybe it'll just completely become, a Carnival ship and they'll put like a whale tail on it or something, or I don't know. I would say, if Costa rebounds and, starts being very successful again, like it was pre-COVID, I would say maybe one or two of them go back. I don't know if they'll send all of them back because I know it's going to cost a lot for them to do it all. But I guess it just really just depends on what exactly they're needing capacity-wise. Because for those who don't know, during COVID and kind of pre-COVID, Costa was starting to hedge a lot of their ships and kind of hedge the market for Asia. And actually, Venezia was a Asia specifically built ship. The Firenze was, of course, a little different because she was more for Italy. She was sailing the Mediterranean like most Costa ships. But Venezia was a Asia built ship, or purposely built for Asia and that Chinese market. And they had, I think, the Pacifica over there. They had quite a few ships over there, and I think that
I
came back
think
to burn
also
them.
yeah, also I think that the Atlantica, which is now going to be the Margaritaville Sea Islander, to again different podcast for
Hmm.
another day here, but that ship was also going to be sailing with Carnival Corporation. It wasn't sailing through Costa, but it was going to be
Adora,
sailing through the new
yeah.
the Chinese venture here. So again, yeah, Carnival had Costa, I should say, should had a very big, they were doing really well in the Asian sector
Yeah.
here, and then it's kind of changed once COVID hit, of course.
Right.
So it is very, very interesting to see the future here. I do find it very, very interesting of what will happen here with these ships. Right, again, they're doing really well for Carnival. It seems, again, we should know how well that really is once they get the second ship online. And
Hmm.
maybe if that does really well, we'll segue into this subject right here. Maybe we could see an addition of an additional ships for the Costa by Carnival fleet. Brandon, what do you think are these ships, or what classes are they going to be? What type of ships? What are you expecting to see if these two ships do really well for Costa Carnival? Will Costa by Carnival continue?
I definitely think a third ship is warranted. I think it is definitely something that they should look into, especially with there is no true cost or no true Carnival ship coming out after the Jubilee for further notice. At least not to say further notice, but we don't really know what their next project is, and there's nothing on order that is public knowledge, at least. So
Yeah.
I would say it's inevitable that we get at least one more. I think the Firenze would do really well up in Alaska, as a
Hmm.
seasonal thing, the fours and fives out of LA during the wintertime, and then maybe move her up to Alaska. I also think I don't think the Pacifica would be the first one that I would think of that they transfer over, but I think they definitely could use a Costa by Carnival ship over on Alaska, doing seasonal sailings over there, and then bring one over seasonally for put it over in Galveston during the wintertime. I would put the Pacifica over there.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah, that
then
would be a great idea. Yeah.
yeah, and I think they do need one that's year round here in Florida as well. I think it'd do a lot better than having the Venezia seasonally, which I think they did confirm that it is going to be seasonal for Venezia being here in Canaveral, because they did update their itineraries recently, and it showed that Venezia will go back to New York after the winter season of 24 into 25 when she comes into Canaveral.
Which makes a lot of sense here, right? Because the weather in New York isn't the most pretty in the winter time. So
No.
having her seasonally in Canaveral, Florida, could be other ports like Miami here in the
Mhm.
future. It makes a lot of sense, right? Again, as one of these ships, they're not exactly cold weather ships. They're not
No.
like warm weather either, like 100%, right? But they're not
Right. These actually
entirely
are
cold
better
weather.
for these actually are better for cold
Yes,
weather, rather
yes.
than the regular Carnival ships, and that's why I feel like Firenze, or even just if they were to transfer over the Pacifica. I don't know why the Pacifica is coming to mind, but these ships are built for a little bit colder weather.
Yes.
Unlike the other Vista class ships, the Venezia and the Firenze both have that retractable roof that is seen on the back of the Conquest class and the
Yeah.
Destiny class ships.
The only thing is they do still have water slides and things like that here.
Mm,
So still some things that are
right.
a little bit more warmer weather. Not 100%
Yeah.
warm weather, right? But they're, again, still, as you mentioned there, they still have some winter elements too. So kind of like
Mm,
what you see with like the Quantrum Ultra class, kind of brings it up to here. Like you putting the Odyssey up in New York. So it's very interesting to see the
mm,
deployment with these ships, right? Because there is only, again, two of them right now. Hopefully, as Brandon's saying, maybe we get the Pacifica, other ships like that. Again, it could be some other ones in the
yeah.
Costa fleet being transferred over. Maybe we could see an XL class ship. I would be very interested to see that.
Yeah.
I think because, again, Carnival has been a really smash hit with the XL class, with the Mardi Gras celebration. Of course, Jubilee starting up in a few weeks here out of Galveston.
Mm,
So again, I think it is very interesting to see here if maybe in the future, maybe we can see one of the other XL class ships in Carnival's fleet, of course, with the Carnival Corporation, be transferred to Carnival by Costa. So again, We'll be interested to see. Brandon, do you have any thoughts about maybe an XL class ship joining the Costa by Carnival fleet,
Oh,
or maybe
absolutely.
you don't think that's going to happen anytime soon?
Absolutely. I've been mentioning the Pacifica so much. I actually feel like we would get Smeralda before any other ship.
Okay.
It's
Yes.
just I think it goes back to when I mentioned, they do need a year-round ship here in Florida. I feel like to get a true feel of whether or not Costa by Carnival is something that could be successful for them. Not that it isn't, but I feel like they should put, one of these ships year-round here in Florida to get a good feel for, how people would truly react to these ships. But
Absolutely.
I would like to see the Smeralda maybe, running Sunday sailings out of Port Canaveral or running, the Saturday sailings out of Miami, for 7 days. I've mentioned it in the past that I feel like, that's something they could do when it comes to competing with Royal Caribbean with, the pace that they're putting out new ships right now.
Yeah.
And of course, at this point, they're dominating the short cruise market. And we always bring up these short cruises, I feel like, in almost every podcast. But if they really wanted to try to compete, with Celebration Key that they have coming up, their little islands or their private area that they're going to compete with Coco Cay with, I feel like if they're going to try to compete with Utopia of the Seas on 3 and 4 night cruising, I feel like they could put Mardi Gras over there. I still think they should put a Dream Class, but that's a little different.
Exactly.
But I feel like they could put a Dream Class or the Mardi Gras on these 3 and 4 night sailings going to Celebration Key, and to replace her on the 7 night sailings, they put the Costa Smeralda or the Toscana or something. I feel like those aren't ships that are going to be on 3 and 4 night sailings. That is not going back to us mentioning. It's kind of a weird crowd and vibe that you're mixing with Carnival and Costa just being these really nice, luxurious looking Italian ships. Then there's people that are stepping onto these expecting a Carnival ship, these big party crowds, and they see this big fancy ship, which like great, but I don't think the Toscana is built for a party crowd for 3 nights, So I feel like
Yes.
if they were to come over and they were to do something like that, they need to move the actual Carnival ships to the 3 and 4 nights and the Costa
Yep.
ships to sevens. But I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good point there. Yeah, I think that again, those ships, I personally could never see them doing the 3 and 4 night cruises with Carnival out of Florida. Because yeah,
Yeah.
as you mentioned here, those are two elegance of a ship. These ships are just super elegant. Like that is one of the things I am very impressed with, and with especially with the newer ones like the Smeralda here. Those ships could definitely be seen replacing maybe the Mardi Gras or the Celebration, doing those shorter cruises. While the Mardi Gras, the Celebration, those ships are a lot more party. You got the roller coaster, you got that
Hmm.
amazing Lido deck meant for those partying. Especially with that two-story tiki bar on the Mardi Gras and Celebration.
Hmm.
Those can slide really well into the 3 and 4 night cruises.
Hmm.
Versus, yeah, you can probably put one of these, maybe the Costa Smeralda, Costa by Carnival, maybe year-round 7 night cruises, Canaveral, Miami. Put the other
Yeah.
ships doing the 3 and 4 night cruises, because that's really the only way Carnival can compete with that. And again, 3 and 4 night cruises. If you haven't checked out already our podcast, we did a podcast a while back on this channel, the Cruising is Life podcast, where Brandon and Justin spoke about the short cruises and what the future is. So go ahead and check that podcast. It is a great listen.
Yeah. And jumping over to our chat here, Dimitri actually said, I think Carnival Costa or Costa by Carnival would do really well in the lesser markets that the Carnival's not really in, and I feel like that's probably part of what they're doing is they're supplementing that New York City market, because they usually do put one ship there year round, or not year round, but throughout every summer usually one ship goes up there. I think last year it was the Magic. So I definitely think that's something that they are looking to do and that they're trying to do, and who knows, maybe their idea behind putting the Firenze over in LA, that is one of the slower markets as well for Carnival and just for every cruise line. But I feel like, that could give them a little bit of leverage to pull the Panorama out of there to put her over here doing something else.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
I definitely agree with that. That's a very good point. And that's probably, part of what they could do. And, if they were to do more, I wouldn't be surprised if they put, say they did the Carnival Smeralda or Carnival Toscana or whatever it is, they could do Mediterranean itineraries during the summer.
Mm,
That's not out of the question
yeah,
either.
absolutely.
It's not
Yeah,
something
there's
that
a good
Carnival
point
does
there.
often, but with a ship like that, there are Carnival cruisers that want to do European cruises, and usually they're limited to one. Lately, it's been the Legend or this a Spirit class ship, so it's definitely something that they could experiment with too. Is getting a third ship and putting it over in the Mediterranean for the summer.
Yeah, Mediterranean would be a good fit. Northern Europe too. I don't know how they would react, especially that ship of Northern Europe.
Hmm.
But yeah, those ships could fit really well. I know Carnival before the whole shutdown was supposed to have the Magic do a European season. That
Hmm.
didn't really end up happening because of the whole shutdown incident.
Yeah.
But no, definitely could see these ships. Them bringing a third ship in, having it do the Caribbean in the winter, and then Europe or another warmer itinerary, maybe South America, something like that. I don't know.
Hmm.
Carnival doesn't really do South America, but maybe ideas like that. You get the warmer weather climate in the summer months.
Hmm.
So that would be a perfect idea here. And again, a lot of good things here that they could do. There's endless possibilities of what Costa Carnival could become here. Again, it's just getting started, to put it this way. Again, we should know once the second ship enters service how well Carnival cruisers react to these ships, right? Because then
Right.
one ship, don't get exactly the best, judgment. You get a little bit of like,
Right.
okay, this is working. But once you get two ships sailing from polar opposite coasts of the United States, then you
Hmm.
can really grasp, okay, people are really digging it, or this, demographic of this side of the country is versus this side, not so much here.
Right. Exactly. And you know, it really don't feel like we have a good idea of the true success. I mean, it's been less than a year. I think the Venezia was transferred over back in April or May, if I'm not mistaken, or sometime this summer. So
Like that,
we
yes.
really don't have a true idea just yet. You can't really judge the success of a cruise line and a cruise ship just off of the first couple months. You can, unless you're experimenting like this. Say this was a brand new ship for cough cough, Norwegian Viva. If but you can't really judge the success of a ship based off of the first few months unless there's just nobody talking about it, which I hear more about the Carnival Venezia than I do the Norwegian Viva, but that's
Oh
that's my
yeah.
thing.
Exactly. Yeah, that ship just came out. It just came out. Been out for a few months by now. It just
Yeah.
had its naming ceremony, and even that, I mean, you hear about the ship doing the cruises from Miami, but once she's going to Puerto Rico, which I think is in a few
Now.
days, yeah,
Yeah.
they haven't. Nope, died off again. What Carnival? I mean, what's Norwegian Viva? What Carnival Venezia though? Oh yeah, you hear about that ship all the time. It's
Right.
in the news. It's not for the good reasons, but it's in the news a lot. It's in also a lot of good, like, positive vlogs about this ship. I
Yeah.
mean, I see this ship all the time wherever I look on the internet. So it's a very, very interesting vessel here, and a really top popular vessel in terms of people talking about it. Sometimes I
Yeah.
actually hear more about the Carnival Venezia than the Carnival Jubilee, and that ship's coming out here shortly.
Right, exactly. And I think it's one of those things where I really feel like you have to do your research if you're going to sail in the Venezia, because half of the complaints that I see people make about the Venezia are because it's a cost ship. It's certain things, certain quirks of the ship that are just different than a normal Carnival ship. You don't normally get that on a Carnival ship. It's just little things here and there, and it's more just like, yeah, but you're on a Costa ship. You're not on a true Carnival ship. And if you look at it that way, then yeah, obviously it's going to be like that.
Absolutely. Yeah, again, you have to make sure when you go into it, same thing when you go on like other cruises, you got to go in with an open mindset, and you also got to go with the mindset that, okay, this is not going to be your stereotypical Carnival cruise, right? It may be some bits and pieces, like a guy's burger, your favorite cruise director,
Hmm.
your favorite bar staff. They may be on the cruise, but the
Right.
ship itself is going to feel a little bit different than
Right.
what you're normally expecting from Carnival. And that's
Right.
kind of the thing that I was, again, hearing from the executives, from a few of my friends and contacts here, was that was a big thing. They need to make sure people were able to know that, yeah, this is not going to be your stereotypical Carnival cruise. It's going to be your same elements, right?
Hmm.
But it's not going to be the same exact experience 100%. They're going to try to get as close as they can get.
Hmm.
But again, with the decor and the overall vibe of the ship, it's going to be a little bit different. But still, again, that classic Carnival experience on a little bit of a twist.
Right, exactly, for sure. And I think, with that in mind, my head immediately goes to somebody that's booking their very first cruise or their very first, yeah, I guess their very first cruise. Because if they were, you know, a second, third time cruiser, they probably have heard about Carnival and Costa by Carnival at this point. So I'm really
Yes.
thinking about the first time cruiser here. First time cruiser, they hear all about Carnival. They hear, the fun ships. They see all these deck parties on YouTube. They see all of this, the craziness that happens on board, and not the bad craziness, but
Yes.
just
Yes.
the fun, the crazy activities, sky ride, roller coasters, all this and that. And then they get
Mega deck
on,
party. Yeah.
right, the mega deck parties, and they get on to, so they book it. They book it expecting that. They expecting this crazy, ship with all of this on it. And they get on, and they're just on this very fancy Italian ship. They're like, that's not what I heard online. That's not really what I was expecting from Carnival. So it's, somebody that's been on Carnival before, or somebody that's, 2, 3, 4 time cruiser, they probably know and they kind of get an idea, but it's more of like the very first time cruiser is really where I start to think like somebody's not going to be really expecting that when they think of a Carnival ship and they book a Carnival ship, unless you have to know what you're getting into.
Exactly, because Carnival doesn't really market. They market the Venezia a lot, but they don't market as much as they market, the XL class, right? So
Right.
that's the funny thing too with other cruise lines, right? When I was a little bit younger, right? I used to watch these ads on television, like you see at the Royal Caribbean. They show like the top of the line, like the Quantum class, right? Then
Hmm.
you go on, let's say you go on the Radiance, and you're like, well, there's no skydiving simulator, there's no. So that's the kind
Right.
of thing, right? You got to make sure when I think Carnival, they sometimes every cruise line has to work on this, kind of market the whole product together, right, to the
Hmm.
public. Because some people, again, when they look at that, they'll see, oh my word, the Carnival cruise is fun. Why? Because they got the sky ride, and then the
Right.
Venezia have like example the sky ride, right? So they gotta again. People have to know when they're booking these ships that there's something different, right? But different in
Right.
a good way, like, right? Sometimes
Right.
change is good, and in this case, it is because it
Right.
is very beautiful, right? It's a very elegant ship. I would kind of compare these to like a celebrity ship, right? Compared to like the
Yeah.
the upper elegance of design.
Yeah. At least from a design standpoint. Yeah, for sure.
Exactly. Yep.
Like
Yep.
I,
Yep.
it does. It feels like a luxurious Italian ship when you step on board these things, and it's yeah, it's just so much different than your standard Carnival ship. And I think that's also probably why, going back to Dimitri's chat earlier from, they probably could put these in the lesser markets because not your everyday Carnival cruiser probably wouldn't be going to these lesser markets or sailing from
Yep.
these lesser markets like New York City, say Europe, Alaska. Because another chat in here says, would Costa Deliziosa go for Alaska? And I feel like that's another thing. They could do something like that. They could put a Costa ship over there. I don't know about the Deliziosa in particular because they already have the Luminosa, which are
Yep.
exact sister ships. But, I feel like a Costa by Carnival ship, given that they are built, those Costa ships are built for colder weather climates too. A lot of them
Yes.
primarily
Yeah.
sail Europe year round. So, whether it's not Northern Europe year round, but they definitely sail Mediterranean year round. And of course, Northern Europe as well, in those colder climates. So they have those retractable roofs to go over. All of them, I believe, except for maybe, I think the Magica was the only one that didn't have it. Or that, I think the
Yeah.
Magica, and I think there's one other that's identical in that class, but it's they all have that retractable roof. Even the Diadema that's the Dream class ship, which is another one that we might get. I feel like the Venezia and the Firenze being Vista class ships, those are good starts. So I wouldn't be surprised if maybe the Diadema is one of the ships too. That's
Well,
a
yeah,
very
definitely.
good
I could see a
possibility
lot of those
actually.
ships transferred. Yep.
Yeah. I feel like we would probably get the Diadema and the Smeralda. Those would probably be the next two ships that we get. And
Absolutely, because another one of the Dream class ships I think would do phenomenal, right? It would be
right,
absolutely great for them, for Carnival, and then another XL class. Another thing,
right.
4 and 4 would be pretty much it if we get both those two ships here. The Dream class is a beautiful class of ships,
Hmm.
right? The Carnival Dream, Carnival Magic, Carnival Breeze, again, there's a design change, right, in between the Dream and the Magic with the Breeze. Of course, that was when Joe Farkas kind of said that was his last build with the Carnival. I believe Magic, I think, was the last one. The Breeze, he
Yeah.
kind of had no hands
Same.
whatsoever in the
Yeah.
Dissolve. I'm not
Same
100% sure though. Brandon
class
probably
though,
back check me
so
on this.
yeah, I
Okay,
think
yep.
that the Magic was his last project, but the Dream being the same class, it pretty much everything carried over because that was the design. You really can't change too much in the same class of ship.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
only
so
big change was the decor. Yeah.
yeah, a lot of the decor, and I think that was a change for the better. If you look at
Yes.
the design for the Dream and the Magic, and then you compare it to the Breeze has these very bright, vibrant colors, whereas there's more darker colors, on the older ships and things like that. So I think that was a very good change for sure that Carnival started making that kind of shift. Because the Breeze has one of the nicest atriums in my opinion, of course, and then going
Oh
next to
yes.
like the with the Vista class. I don't like that there's no glass elevators there, but that dreamscape there in the middle makes it look really nice. It just gives it that little hub feel that the atrium still gives. So
Yep.
it's yeah,
That is one thing I do miss on for Royal Caribbean, for example. We talk about them a lot, the Royal Caribbean, right? But that's one thing I don't like is that on the bigger ships, you kind of don't have an atrium anymore,
mhm,
and that's one of the big centerpieces I love on with older cruise ships, right? They have that more atrium area here. With the bigger the ships they get, unfortunately, they don't have those anymore. But I just love that connection. You get those, elevators running up. You have the
mhm.
bar in the middle usually. Really, really beautiful, and kind of missed that on again the bigger ships for every cruise line, unfortunately.
Right. And they don't have that on the XL ships. And even
Yep.
though they do have like an atrium type area, the Grand they call it Grand Central. They have that stage there that they do shows on, which is really cool. They have all the big LED screens, a lot of seating and everything. You have the bars nearby. So they have something similar, but you don't get the elevators going all the way up the span of the ship, things like that.
Yes, and that's one of the things, like example with the Smeralda, right? Each of those XL class ships are pretty much the exact same design in terms of nautical design, right? It's pretty much the same as like hull structure, and you give or take a few structural elements, right? Some of them have the flat bow in the front, versus some of them
Right.
have the traditional bulbous bow, and things like that. But each area, pretty much each, like for example, the P&O, like the Arvia and stuff like that, those have like a different style. They still have like the Grand Central area on
Mhm.
Carnival ships, but those instead of it being like a stage, whatever, it's more of just an open glass window, right? So that's some of the things like again different between the cruise lines here, but for the most part, that's another good reason why we think the Smeralda may join in the future, is
Yeah.
because again it's very similar to what everyone loves with the XL class. Again, the layout may be a little bit different, but same reason like why they're probably bringing in the Venezia here, right, to the Costa by Carnival fleet.
Mhm.
That's why they did bring it in, was because it was a very similar layout to the Vista class, which their cruisers love.
Right, exactly. And I feel like that's probably a very good ship to test it out with too. They're not going all in with the Smeralda and their Toscana. They're not dipping their toes in the water with, the Deliziosa or, whatever their smaller ships are. I don't know how
Yep.
many small ships they have. It's not the Pacifica. They're going in with a medium-sized ship and one of their more popular ships, and it's one of the more popular ship classes for Carnival. So it's definitely trying to like they're kind of like stepping in with both feet, but they're not diving in, but they're not
Yep.
hesitant, to try it out. So
Yep.
I think that was a
Exactly.
very good class of ship for them to do it with. I think if I would say if Firenze is as successful as a Venezia, I wouldn't be surprised at all if we see the Smeralda come over. Especially
Absolutely.
going back to and I even see it in the chat here, bringing the XL class ships over for 3 and 4 night ships. The Smeralda is not built for 3 and 4 night Bahama cruises, but the Mardi Gras and the
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Celebration, those would be great ships if Carnival again wants to compete with the Utopia of the Seas on 3 and 4 night sailings and the Allure of the Seas on 3 and 4 night sailings. You know, that's the way to do it. That's really the only way they can. I always will preach that they should put a Dream class on there rather than these Conquest class. But
Yeah. They need to.
but if you even with the Dream class, they really still can't compete with the Oasis class. But the
Absolutely.
XL
Zero
class can.
competition.
The XL class can. They can
Yep.
come close at least.
Yes, that's right. Still no competition in terms of size, but the XL
Hmm.
class here with Costa by Carnival or Costa Cruise Line with Esmeralda,
Hmm.
she does come pretty close to an Oasis class ship. She's not exactly the same size, right? They're still
Hmm.
smaller, like significantly still smaller, but still, that's the only thing Carnival could do to again level up their 3 and 4 night cruises to compete with Royal Caribbean and even
Right.
Disney Cruise Line. I mean, Disney
Right.
Cruise Line's putting these newer ships, right? Disney
Right.
has the Disney
Disney's always
Wish
done that.
doing the 3 and 4 night cruises. So I mean, Disney's always done it, right? But
Yeah.
these are still new tonnage, right? So
Hmm.
it's something Carnival has to do. They have to say, okay, we're going to put an XL class ship, even
Hmm.
though for them it's not as new as the Utopia per se, but they
Hmm.
have to do that. And the only way for them to do that without, removing one of the XL class ships from a 7 night run in a market, again, whether they choose Miami or Canaveral to test out an XL class with the 3 and 4 nights, that will probably determine where they're going to put this Costa by Carnival ship if they ever do put an XL class ship in to replace, let's say, the 7 night cruises, which could be an option here, right? Because again, they don't have to build another XL class ship in the Carnival fleet.
Hmm.
They can just transfer one of those Costa by Carnival ships over, slap of course the new hull paint on it and all that things, and go ahead and off to the races here with a ship doing the 7 nights while they put one of the other XL Carnival ships, whether the Mardi Gras or the Celebration, to doing the 3 and 4 night cruises.
Right, exactly. And I'm wondering if maybe that's what they're trying to do with Port Canaveral and the Venezia is trying to test out the Florida market, see if the Florida market is actually willing and wanting something like that. And you know,
Absolutely.
and see it in the chat. I see it in the chat here as well. But like we mentioned earlier, there's no new Carnival ships for the foreseeable future for now. So, this is something that Carnival really needs to be looking at right now. Is you know they gotta stay with the market. They can't fall behind right now. Again, they're not worried about Norwegian. I can tell you that. But
Yeah, they're
but
no worries there.
Royal Caribbean is leaving them in the dust. It on every market. Alaska, they've got the Quantum class over there. Short
Yeah.
cruises, they got the Utopia sailing these. They've got the Icon of the Seas running. I mean, just blows the XL class out of the water completely.
And they have
Just
Star doing
every
that too. So yeah.
right. Europe, yeah, Europe's not something that Carnival normally does, but they take over in Europe over there with the Odyssey, with the Voyager class. They got multiple ships over there. They got ships. They got the Oasis running out of New York during the summer, which is a direct competitor now with the Venezia. Like Royal Caribbean in every single market is dominating Carnival right now, and it used to not be like
Yeah.
that.
I think the only cruise line besides like Royal to dominate in market, besides in of course Costa here in Europe, is well MSC, and
Mm,
even that again, no competition. I think the Costa in Europe, their biggest competition is MSC,
that's
and
why they're
MSC a
struggling
lot
right
of new
now.
tonnage. MSC is not afraid to put new tonnage to use. Like they're putting new tonnage with markets that they're not like usually would put new tonnage, and they're not afraid to invest. Which is Costa again, Carnival again. They're cut. The whole corporation, I believe, is cut with new builds. So
Hmm.
I think there's one more smaller ship for I think Seabourn. I think
Yeah.
is getting a new build. I think in 25, 26. But besides that, X means no. They're not putting any
Yep.
new builds. So again,
Yeah.
Carnival, if they
They've
need new
got.
tonnage, I'm sure they will need it. They need to put that in.
Yeah, I think they have the Star Princess, which is going to be the second Sun class or the
Yep.
Sphere class,
Okay.
like the Sun. But after that, there's not much there, and they really need to look into it because
Yes.
yeah, it just I know
Because
a lot of well, it is because of COVID. I feel like if COVID wasn't a thing,
hmm
we'd be seeing a lot of different. We'd see a different side of Carnival right now. We'd probably see them being a little bit more risky for this. We probably wouldn't even see the Venezia in Carnival's fleet right now.
Oh yeah, I bet you if the whole shutdown didn't come, I bet you that we would never see Costa by Carnival. Would never happen.
No. And the reason we're even seeing Costa by Carnival is because Costa is a little bit struggling, and that's primarily because of MSC. MSC has taken every risk they could possibly take to grow themselves. They're not afraid to do anything right now. MSC,
Crazy.
they will throw money at the wall and hope it sticks, and they will do it every day of the week. That is pretty much how they're doing it. Because they went from the ships like the Divina was a pretty good sized ship for them,
Yeah.
and then the Seaside class was very successful for them. So they go, okay, let's build a little bit bigger. Meraviglia class, perfect size ship, always anything between that 160 to 180 range, perfect size. So they built a Meraviglia Plus, the Virtuosa, and the
Yep.
Grandiosa. Those are 180,000 tons. Beautiful ships,
And
great
then
ships.
or
My cat's
Europa.
attached to my sleeve right now.
No
Um,
cats allowed in the studio here. No, that's why we have no
um,
cats allowed in the studio.
but then you got the world class ships. They went, okay, well, let's just keep pumping out more of these every single year. By the way, while we're still doing that, let's pump out some 200,000 ton ships too. We're gonna go for the Oasis class now. Not only are we going for
Yeah,
everybody's throats, we're gonna go for Royal Caribbean's throat here with the Oasis class. We're gonna pretty much do the same thing. So, and
exactly.
that pretty much
By the
is
way,
what caused Costa to start struggling a little bit, is because
hmm
MSC is just being so risky and going with everything and it's working for them.
absolutely. Like that's one of the things. By the way, this is one of the things I love about the World America coming out. It's going to be the predecessor to the World Europa, right? I think the deck numbers. I'm sure Brandon. I'm sure you saw
Oh
these.
yeah,
Like they
yeah,
have like Port Canaveral as a deck. I'm like, if I'm
yeah.
going on this ship, I gotta stay at Port Canaveral deck. You know,
There's like the
I
Seattle
thought that was
deck,
very
there's the
cute.
Miami deck, there's the Port Canaveral deck, which is funny because they're not even going to Canaveral. But they have
I
like
know it's
just
kind of funny.
American cities listed as like the decks. You have the
I
Lido
also,
deck with Carnival. Yeah, they have like the Seattle deck. It's funny.
it's funny. It's funny, yeah, because like Port Canaveral isn't really like a. It's not a like Canaveral. The city of Cape Canaveral isn't like a major city, right?
Hmm.
And they have like Seattle, New York, all these places, right? And then there's
Yeah.
Port Canaveral, which I think is funny. But
It's good
back to the
stuff.
point here, right, about this Costa by Carnival. MSC, they're just absolutely dominating. I mean, and that's one
Yeah.
of the things. Like Carnival, again, as we mentioned here, if the shutdown never happened, I'm sure Carnival wouldn't be as bringing these ships in. But unfortunately, that's the only way to get new tonnage in is to bring these other ships in. And what I'm interested, Brandon, and I'm not sure if you noticed here, but the cruise industry is thriving right now. And they're
Oh,
sometimes
it's
back to
booming.
as good as they were doing before the shutdown. You can look at the financials reports too. They can charge just as much for this inventory that they have, right? They can charge triple the rates, right? So I wonder if Costa by Carnival is doing phenomenal, and even Carnival, the whole corporation itself, is doing really well with Carnival Cruise Line. I
Hmm.
wonder if because they need the extra capacity to make some extra money here, they maybe will transfer some ships to, again, the Costa by Carnival. Maybe, as you mentioned, transfer the Smeralda, because again, we'll be interested to see after this year what their tonnage numbers look like
Yeah.
versus their demand. So again, I will be very interested to see that.
Right, for sure. And like you mentioned, the industry is absolutely booming, and Icon of the Seas is kind of, I think, the front runner in that, and kind of the leader of the pack there when it comes to the industry booming. But you know, yeah, the cruise lines are putting out numbers, guest capacities and numbers and rates and just everything is surpassed. 2019 was a record year for the cruise industry. It was the best year for the industry ever. And in 2022 and 2023, we're beating 2019 numbers. Guest capacity is at an all-time high. Bigger ships, yes, but the demand is there, and the demand is growing more and more every single day. And I think the cruise lines are marketing themselves very well, especially Royal Caribbean. But the demand's there. So Carnival, I mean, they've got these XL class ships. They got the Mardi Gras, they got the Celebration, they got the Jubilee, but they got to keep pumping them out if they got to still, like you said, add tonnage to compete with these other cruise lines. They're just gonna kind of fall.
Exactly. That's one of the things I find interesting too, right, Brandon? Is during the whole shutdown thing, the Carnival Corporation, they were selling off ships
Right.
left and right, and yet they're right now doing pretty much the same, if not better, because of course they brought these more ships into service, but they're doing numbers which are sometimes just as good as when they had twice as many tonnage, right? So
Right.
again, they're getting these bigger ships with more tonnage, right? But they're getting these. Of course, they got rid of all the smaller ones. There's only two
Right.
fantasy class ships remaining: the Paradise and the Elation. The only two with azopods, which is I think is one of the
It's
reasons why they're
funny.
still around, right? Because of those azopods. But again, those are the reasons of why Carnival is doing so well. They have these new bigger tonnage by Costa
Hmm.
by Carnival, these new XL class ships coming in. So again, brings us back to the point I touched on earlier here. I will be not surprised if Costa by Carnival looks in and getting more ships to help Carnival Cruise Line as a whole, help really get their ability to sail with more numbers of passengers, right? Because at
Right.
the end of the day, that's what cruise lines want. They want to sail as many people as they can because at the end of the day, it's good for everyone, right? It's good for us
Hmm.
cruisers. We can go on more cruises. It's good for them. They make more money. It's
Hmm.
good for everyone all around. It's good for the ports because they have more ships coming in and out. So again, it's a win-win having more ships come to these mainstream cruise lines because it's good for everyone in the supply chain, us as a consumer, and of course as them as the cruise lines themselves.
Right, exactly. And yeah, they did sell off a lot of older ships, but with these bigger ships, they're actually putting out better numbers than they were.
Yeah.
They're having more efficient ships lately. Yeah, they got rid of 6 fantasy class ships, but these 3 XL class ships, they're not only are they running more efficiently, they're more cost effective, but they're sailing higher guest capacities with the 3 of them than all 6 of those were combined. So
Crazy.
it's just, yeah, I mean, bigger ships are the future of the industry, and they're going to continue to be. But it's they really need to start putting out a little bit more just to kind of stay up. And I think Costa by Carnival is a good way. Just given that Costa as a brand is struggling a little bit, so if they market these as as Carnival ships, it not only boosts Costa and it helps Costa out with they can start running a little bit more efficiently and more effectively over there with a lower fleet or a lower fleet count. But and then Carnival is of course benefiting because now they have more ships. They can advertise them as Carnival ships. So Carnival ships just here in America, they will sell, and
Oh yes.
they will always sell Carnival ships without a problem. It's just Royal Caribbean might be dominating the market right now, but Carnival's not going anywhere anytime soon.
Absolutely. No, that was one of the things too, right? Again, with Costa by Carnival, it's still but Costa Cruise Line is part of the Carnival Corporation
Hmm.
umbrella, right? So that's the thing too, right? Again, these ships are still making Carnival Corporation money. So even if they transfer them to Carnival, which they're gonna make more money with transferring these ships, I bet, with transferring them to Carnival than keeping them in the Costa fleet. So that'll be another good thing too. If Carnival wants to pay off their debt a little more, make more money back
Right.
to what they were making before the shutdown here, maybe if they transfer a few of these ships a little more quicker than they would
Hmm.
to, of course, Carnival Costa by Carnival, maybe that will help the bottom line of the company, right? Because again,
Hmm.
they're still making money. These cruise lines all together will now help, like again, by transferring these ships, will
Hmm.
help pay off the company's debt. So I think that is something
Right.
that's very interesting here and a good point, right? That again, maybe we see more of these ships getting transferred sooner because again, it's not like you're hurting Costa by removing these ships because you're still. I mean, the Costa may not be selling as much numbers, but Costa will still have the ships for the itineraries that their clientele wants to sail, right?
Hmm.
And then they will not Royal Caribbean, but Carnival Corporation. They're going to be phenomenal by this whole situation here, right? Because
Hmm.
they're still making money from cruise lines, and if Carnival's bringing in more money, I guess, then that's unfortunately what has to happen.
Right. And I think if they leverage Costa by Carnival right and they do it, they kind of go in with the right approach with it over the next couple of years, they can really skyrocket themselves on the next true Carnival ship project.
Yeah.
I feel like the next Carnival ship project is I feel like it's going to be announced soon. I would say probably within the next year we might get rumblings of the next generation Carnival ship, whatever that may be. But I would say, if Carnival they can kind of put themselves in these smaller markets. I think something out of the Concordia class, yes, that Concordia would do well over in Alaska. I think running alongside Splendor, running Splendor, a say the Pacifica is the part of the Concordia class, then running the Luminosa and the Spirit, that would be a really good, that's a strong Alaska lineup. Then you still have the Panorama and the Radiance running down in there. So you've got a Costa by Carnival ship running Alaska. You've got one still down there running the 4 and 5 nights out of Los Angeles. You've got one up in New York. You can have one up down in Port Canaveral or Miami running 7-night cruises, and you can leverage the XL class towards the shorter itineraries to kind of try to compete a little bit with Royal Caribbean on the Oasis class there. So if you can really kind of put in these little markets, and Costa is big over in Europe. Just because they're going to make a
Yeah.
Costa by Carnival ship doesn't mean it has to come over here. They can do it, there's Carnival cruisers that want to go to Europe. You know, you put the Legend over there during the summer like they normally do, yes. But then, you can put the run, quote unquote, Carnival Diadema, run that on Mediterranean sailings over the summer, and then bring it to Miami over the winter. They can really,
absolutely.
They can really leverage these lower markets, like the chat mentioned earlier. They can leverage these lower markets with these ships that are a little bit more cost effective for them, because they're not building a brand new ship. They're using their own ships out of a market that's struggling for them, or out of a company that's struggling. So they're helping their smaller subsidiaries by helping themselves.
Exactly. That's the point I mentioned earlier, right? Again, that this isn't going to cost. Also, it's not going to cost Carnival Cruise Line a lot of money to bring extra tonnage to Carnival Cruise Line itself, right? By the Costa by Carnival brand.
Mm-hmm.
So it's only going to cost them. I can't imagine what 100 million, 125, maybe, to put what
mm-hmm.
they need to make it Costa by Carnival, right?
Mm-hmm.
So to transfer it from Costa to Costa by Carnival, right? It's very confusing with the wording here, right?
Yeah.
But again, that's one of the things that that's not going to cost them a lot of money to do, and that money that they're saving by getting new tonnage to their fleet, they can invest that money they would have spent building more tonnage to then work and design a brand new class of ships, with of course leveraging the other vessels in the Costa by Carnival fleet to help fill in those itineraries for older ships. Maybe that's the case. They start taking some of the other older ones offline with these new other bigger Costa by Carnival ships coming into the fleet. Again, this all depends on just how successful this is, which we're all hoping here in the cruise industry that this is a successful long-term endeavor by Carnival.
Right, exactly. And jumping over to the chat, Stu says, I could see MSC building even larger ships in the world class, and that's absolutely possible. And I think
absolutely,
that's something that I think Carnival is setting themselves up to as well. And I think, going back to they leverage these Costa by Carnival ships. They don't need all of them. They don't need Costa's entire fleet. No, but if they were running four, maybe a fifth one, I think it would be perfect for them to leverage themselves and let Carnival cook a little bit. And I see Carnival's next class of ship and their next generation ship being 200,000 tons. If they they really can put themselves in a good spot financially if they did that. They do these cost-effective ship transfers over from Costa. Maybe down the road they can send them back, who knows, at least one or two of them when Costa's in a better position, or Carnival's in a better position where they don't necessarily need that anymore. But I think Carnival really can put a lot more time, effort, and just R&D work, research and development, as far as making their next ship the best it possibly can be. They did phenomenal with the XL class from Carnival, or the XL class ships. Whether it's the Carnival ones, AIDA, P&O, Costa, they're all incredible. They did such an amazing job with all of those ships. So if they can take what they've learned and what they've done really well with the XL class and improve on that and put it on something bigger, don't make a XL Plus ship, but make its own new next generation, not going from a Dream to a Vista class, but an XL class to, a pinnacle project, not, a modern day pinnacle project.
I think what a good idea of Carnival would be to be like, as you're mentioning here, I think is to make it from Oasis to Icon is a good example, right? They're very similar, kind of hull design, but the ship themselves, the way they've been designed, they've built on what they love. People love the XL class. So yeah, as your point, Brandon, there, I think if they definitely would go ahead and not make an XL Plus, right, but make a redesign, start from a blank slate, and see where they get.
Right, exactly, and that's probably, I think, what is most successful with the XL class right now is that Carnival has always had it, people call it the cookie cutter design. The Destiny class has the same layout as the Dream class. The Dream class essentially is just on the inside, feels like a stretched version of a Destiny. It's really weird to think of it like that, but every single Carnival ship, it's the atrium on deck 3, you got the bar in the middle with the staircase right there. all the elevators going up. Deck 4, you've got the photo gallery that just circles around that ring basically. Then deck 5, you have all the shops. There's a ring up there. There's a little hallway that leads into the casino. There's a candy store right here, and then the entire the starboard side of the ship, all the way down is a walkway with the casino, taking up the whole center and port side of the ship. Like every single Carnival ship is like that. Both of those, it's just longer, different. I just described the interior and design of 90% of their fleet almost. Like
much.
the Spirit,
That's
the
one of
Spirit
the
class
things
is
I
a
love
lot
about-
different, and
Yeah.
when I got on the
Absolutely.
Mardi Gras, I didn't feel like I was on a Carnival ship because I was so used to that design. I didn't know where I was. I just didn't feel like, not that I didn't feel like I was at home, because I felt right at home on a Carnival ship. I've still sailed with them more than anyone else, but it just felt so much different, and I felt like more of a connection to that ship because I truly have never felt lost on a Carnival ship until I got on the Mardi Gras. It was such a cool experience just getting to like familiarize myself with something so different than what I was used to.
Absolutely here. No, I'm excited. I hopefully that they eventually one day put the XL class with Carnival doing the 3 and 4 night cruises because I would love to check it out. I don't want to commit myself to 7 nights on Mardi Gras Celebration or
You'll like
Jubilee
it.
just not yet, but I mean, I'm down to go on it. One of the first sailing. Here's the deal, Carnival. If you put the XL doing the 3 night cruise, I may be on one of your first sailings because that is literally probably one of the best like Carnival ships in the past few years. It's with the XL class. I mean, they've knocked it out of the park with that class of ship. So again, we're back to our point with the XL class with Costa by Carnival here. I'm excited to see what the future is for Carnival's fleet, as well as their future new builds, right? Because the future is bright for Carnival if they can manage to get out of most of this debt.
Right, and they seem to be doing pretty well with all that, and so is Royal Caribbean.
Absolutely.
All the cruise lines, again, the industry is more successful than it's ever been. Pre-COVID numbers were the highest the industry has ever been, and we're already exceeding some of those 2019 numbers. So if
crazy.
Carnival can really, I say add 2, maybe 3 more. I say add a Concordia class and add the Smeralda, or another XL class, or add both the XL class, and put the Firenze up in Alaska seasonally. They have a couple different ways they could really approach it, and I think again, just these lesser markets are these markets that they don't typically go to. They can really do a good job with them because they're markets that probably would actually like the Costa by Carnival idea. The people that are going to Europe for a Carnival cruise, they probably would like Carnival enough to where they wouldn't mind being on a Costa ship, a Costa ship at heart. So
vice versa probably too, yeah.
Exactly. So I think they could use probably 2, maybe a third Costa by Carnival ship, in addition to the 2 Vista class ships that we're getting. And then just kind of go from there, and they really can help themselves make sure their next project, whenever that is, it could be the best possible project you can ever get.
Absolutely. No, it's really is great. I mean, as you mentioned, another cool thing about them, if they do that split season in maybe Europe or something, the Europe fans or the people from people who like Carnival Corporation, well, as Costa, people who love Costa will know Costa by Carnival because it's kind of the same ship, right?
Right.
Maybe different crew, but other than that, it's pretty much like the same ship in the same environment. So people feel at home from Europe, right? And for the Europeans when they go on these ships, and then the Americans when they come over, or people from other areas of the world, wherever that is, when they come on board, they'll be like, oh, it's the Carnival experience. I sort of know. So I think it will do really well, especially if we do get that ship that does that, split season. It does the winter in the Caribbean and then the Mediterranean in the summer months. I think that is a perfect idea there, Brandon.
Right, exactly. And, it going, again, it puts them in such a good position for their next project. I'm not saying that Carnival needs to go out and build something bigger than the Icon, but they should build something that's comparable in size to the Oasis class. I think.
Absolutely.
220,
It's about time.
230. I think it's time that Carnival builds something not only over 200, but I think something 220, 230 is something that could really say, hey, we're Carnival. We're back in business, baby. We're ready to go. We're here to compete. I think
that is
it could really
much
put
needed.
them in a good position. I feel like it would be amazing if they ever put that monorail design that they had on the Pinnacle project. I think that would be really cool if they did something like that. But I think there's just a lot of different things that really could work in their favor if they continue to do Costa by Carnival and they continue to do it right.
Pinnacle project was so ahead of its time. I mean,
It really was.
look at some of the similarities between the Oasis class and Project Pinnacle, right? And Oasis class was a few years after the original designs were made of the Pinnacle project, right? The split superstructure, kind of the after with the cabins, leveled down, kind of like the Aqua Theater suites here. Of course, you got the others, similarities, but Pinnacle project has some other crazy features. Like I'm not sure, Brandon, you correct me on this. You know the Pinnacle project a lot more better than I do, but it had like a lazy river, which
Yes,
is
it
like
did.
that's never been done. That still hasn't been done today.
Still
this
hasn't
day
been
on a
done.
cruise ship.
Fun fact:
The monorail is crazy too, yeah.
Disney looked into doing a lazy river on their Dream class, but they couldn't get the decks. They just isn't enough deck space for something like that. But on something, the size of an Oasis class, an Icon class, this, if Carnival is to do something that's 230,000 tons, that's something they could do. I mean, it's a lazy river. It's nothing like huge and exciting like a roller coaster, but like a lazy river's never been done. And there's people that could literally just sit in one of those things all day long.
Yeah, I think the closest thing ever been done on a cruise ship to a lazy river. So I'm not sure if you were on the lure, if you noticed it, but at the H2O zone or the kids zone, they had that round circular.
I used to play in that.
Like a lazy river, but nothing out of all these years. With the Icon, even with the Icon, they didn't put a lazy river in. They put the water slides, which is super cool, right? But again, Pinnacle project well ahead of its time. So we're going to have to wait and see what Carnival cooks up for their next design of this amazing ship coming, hopefully sometime before 2030.
Yep. So we're going to begin to wrap it up here. So with our closing statements, Costa by Carnival, keep them, ditch them, add more. What do you think?
I think we keep a few of them. I think we add more. But I think when we add more, we don't add more Vista class. I think we add.
Yeah. Well, there's only two.
XL,
we got both of them.
XL. That's what I'm thinking. I think when we go XL, we go all the big boys, and we go all the way home.
Yep, I definitely agree. I definitely say add more. At least one of the XL class ships, if not both. Maybe a Concordia class. But yeah, I think if Costa by Carnival continues to be successful with the two Vista class that we got or that we're getting, add at least one, if not both XL class, maybe one more after that. I think Carnival could really put themselves in a good position.
Oh, they can do a phenomenal position if they did that. Absolutely, 100%.
Absolutely. So we'll go ahead and wrap it up here. Thank you guys so much for hanging out, for those who watch this live here on YouTube. And thank you all for listening to this point. If you're watching this or listening to this later on, if you're listening on Spotify or any other podcasting apps. But that'll be all for tonight's stream, all for tonight's podcast. Thank you all so much again for listening and watching, and we'll see you next time.
Hey, have a good night, everyone.